So welcome to Co-Parenting Talk with Colleen. Our host, Colleen O'Neil, is an experienced educator and divorce coach and mediator in Westport, Connecticut. She has her own practice, Mediation and Beyond, in Westport. So take it away, Colleen.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. And for all those who are kind of snuggled in bed listening to this at a later date and time. Hope some of the information we hear that we're going to provide you here is helpful. That's the goal of it. It's to be thought-provoking. This is definitely not legal advice, and it's definitely not mental health advice, but it definitely is professional, I think, wisdom and personal wisdom that's come from shared parenting over time and has come from our own life experience. So with that said, some of the questions that came in, both to John and myself, have been really interesting. As typical, what I find is that many of them are around parenting issues, bringing in a new partner to the relationship, mediation, the differences. So I'm just going to pick a few here tonight. One of the ones that came in was, can somebody stop their ex-partner from introducing a new partner? A lot of parents have problems with that. So really the essence of it is there a way for a parent to stop their child spending time with the other person's new partner? The short answer to that is no. So both parents have parental responsibility, and they're able to exercise that responsibility in whatever way they see fit. Obviously, barring neglect, abuse, anything along those lines, or something that's extremely inappropriate, although that would be subjective. The only exception really to this would be in situations where a child was spending time with a new partner and the court considered it unsafe for that child to be with that person. But let me just say, it's typically very rare. In mediation, or prior to your dissolving your cases, whether you're seeing a mediator or you're seeing an attorney, many parents have some kind of clause in there that from the dissolution or the day of divorce, dissolution of the marriage, that they either wait 6 months or a year before either party introduces the child to their new partner. Some parents abide by that. Some parents agree to it and don't abide by that. So then that brings to the next question, which is really, if my ex doesn't follow that guideline that they agreed to, they are in contempt of court, although the damage, so to speak, has already been done, and you can't unravel what's already been done. So that child has already met that person. But certainly you can go back to court on those issues. I think you have to really ask yourself, is it financially worth it to you? Is it time to just kind of like let that go? Or if you really do feel like your child is not in a safe space and that the court would consider that person dangerous to your child, then obviously you should seek the court's help on that. Or if you had a partner that you could go to a mediator on and go mediate that out, then by all means, I'd probably go that route first. So that's the answer to whether or not you should be able to, can you keep your new partner's girlfriend or boyfriend away from the children? Typically that answer is no. So on to another question that came in that I'm reading here. It says, what if I change my mind about something in mediation? Is mediation binding? And by binding means you can't change what you agreed to. Once you mediate your agreement, whether you used a mediator or used collaborative divorce or you just used 2 separate attorneys, what you agreed upon in that divorce decree is binding, but you are allowed to go back to court to change whatever you feel that isn't working that you once agreed to, because agreeing to something and then actually living it are 2 different things. So it may sound good on paper, but once you get home and you start living that agreement, it may not work out so well. So it is binding, but you are allowed to go back and change some of the things that you have agreed to, such as parenting plans, financial agreements that may or may not be working. Like I just mentioned earlier, introducing children to new partners. You may have agreed to paying 50-50 on medical expenses, but you actually can't afford that because your child recently had a surgery and it's not working. So there are ways to do that. Alimony obviously is one. If it's non-modifiable, typically you can't go back and change that. That is typically binding, but certainly people try to get around that as well. If there's a significant change of circumstance. Another one is, how do I decide if mediation is right for me and my spouse? And I think obviously mediation, which is a little different than hiring two attorneys to duke it out, is if the more control that you and your soon-to-be ex have over dissolving your marital agreement and have control over your parenting time together, the better it is. So the courts really don't belong inside our families. And so if you can actually find a mediator, whether that's an attorney who's a mediator who can be a neutral, or that's somebody who's trained mediator but is not an attorney, which is also an option. But getting somebody in there who can help you navigate these really challenging conversations. And I think the better people who are able to do that are ones that really want to have both mom and dad in their children's lives as much as possible and in the best way as possible. So who does it work for? It works for people who want to work mediation out. So if you really want to have a good situation going forward, and you can talk that out with your partner, but you just need that third person in there to help navigate those tough conversations and help you both come to that a good decision, then I would definitely opt for mediation. I think the last one is, and this one is, I'm afraid of my spouse. Can mediation still work for me? I touched on that last week, and I think given October's Domestic Violence Month, I think that's a good one. You know, if there's a high conflict divorce in terms of, high conflict marital situation where there's been abuse, obviously mediation is probably not the best route to go. But if you're afraid of your spouse because you don't want your spouse yelling, you think you're going to be intimidated by that communication around those tougher issues, that mediator is in the room with you at all times. There are times they'll step out to, have someone step out so they can speak with somebody, kind of like a sidebar, so to speak, and get some information. But you're not left alone in the room by any stretch. And so, but if you're even fearing that there's going to be conflict going home or driving home, don't drive in a car together to the appointment. Come separately. I think address those issues with the mediator up front. Make sure the mediator is comfortable and knows that you're kind of feeling a little worrisome. But I don't think you should have to be afraid. If you are, then mediation is probably not a good route for you. And then here's another one that came, which, as long as I'm on this kind of topic, it says, if my spouse and I do not talk to each other, can mediation still work? Listen, improved communication can only really happen if the two of you are in the room together. So if you're not talking to each other, it's going to be really tough to come to an agreement, because mediation obviously is an exchange of ideas, an exchange of thoughts. And if one person's not speaking to the other, I would probably best advise you that you'd probably want to seek your own counsel. Mediation can help you learn how to communicate better. But I suppose if you were communicating better, then these things would be easier to navigate, or maybe the relationship would still be able to be manageable. But I think mediation is good at helping you navigate the conversation, but you have to be able to enter the room in the space, being willing to have the conversation. Conversation is just vital to the mediation process. If you want someone to speak on your behalf, then I would tell you probably your best defense is to hire your own attorney. But if you'd like to do the speaking, and if you'd like to have more control and say over what goes on, then I would tell you mediation is a good process for both individuals. So John, so those are some of the ones that came in. I don't know if you have any thoughts or comments.
Well, thanks very much. Yeah, I had a follow-up question on the contempt. So you have a mediated agreement.
Yep.
And one of the parties does not follow the agreement.
Happens all the time.
Yeah, and you say the remedy is really to go for a contempt citation. I would assume that's in the case where it's repetitive and it's long-term and sort of a pattern of non-compliance, right?
Yeah, so as I said, I've said before, the name of my practice is Mediation and Beyond. It's because that beyond, it's all the things after the ink is dried on that divorce paper. And I can't say that enough. When you actually have to live these documents and what you signed on for, which probably seems really manageable at the time when you're doing it, it's manageable if everybody's doing 100% of what they're supposed to be doing. Then it's a no-brainer and it has a lot of flow and it really goes well. However, if you have a partner that doesn't show up on time repeatedly, that misses seeing the kids, let's just say, can miss payments on things. And so it's not a one-time thing. So I'm just gonna say, let's say dad has the kids and mom is repeatedly late, not showing, changing drop-off spots and all those kinds of things, then obviously what you agreed on isn't working. And so mom is in contempt if she's not showing up. And if the parenting plan isn't working, I'm always going to be the first, obviously, given my own personal experience and then my own professional experience. Please, if you can go mediate it and work it out yourselves, but don't let it keep going on where, John, it goes to what you were saying, that there's a pattern. You don't want to create a pattern. You need to nip this stuff in the bud. So a one-off is a one-off, things come up for everybody. But if there are patterns of no-shows, late, changing times, not paying. So if it's ongoing, then you need to nip that in the bud. Don't wait 6 months out and think that this is going to change. So my first line of defense would always be, hey, Sue or John, we need to get in to see somebody. This isn't really working. Make an appointment, go in and see somebody. If somebody's not going to go in and mediate, you don't have any choice but to file.
Okay.
So,
yeah, that's great advice. The Shared Parenting Council has a proposal about contempt citations in family court in general. And the proposal is that the court should adopt a series of penalties, financial penalties. So, there's a certain fine for the first, $200 for the first offense or whatever it is, some fine. And if it continues and develops into more of a pattern, which is really a serious concern, then there's an increased financial penalty. And it increases like that. And beyond that, I think just increasing financial penalties, because of course a judge does not want to put a parent in jail. I mean, that is an obvious, obviously not in the best interest of children. And I think a problem with family court is that these contempt citations, there are a lot of them around. That's my experience anyway. There's just many, many contempt citations flying around family court because of these issues you just told us about.
Well, I think that one of the things with that, John, and although I agree with that, I think the problem is going to come into, people having, they need information to back up their claim, because you can't be running into court for every little thing. And so I think hopefully it would make people think twice about running back to court. But it would also, I always tell people, document, because a judge, they're a human being. They don't know who's telling the truth. They're trying to figure out, he said, she said, and the attorneys get involved and they're only speaking on your behalf. He said, she said, but no one knows the truth. The only two people that know the truth are the two people in it. And, but I think both parties, you have to document. That's why I'm a fan of things like when you have like Family Wizard or FAIR, when you have parents that don't get along, that thank goodness for technology that you actually have apps that are really inexpensive, really like a cup of coffee a day, you know what I mean, that are inexpensive, but that document, you know, what time the drop off was. You can document receipts, you can document payments, emails. So the parent says, well, you didn't contact me. Yes, I did. It's on Family Wizard. There it is. It sits there for eternity. And there it is. And I think for parents who argue, or we don't know who's telling the truth and who's not, that's the best we're going to do right now until we come up with something else. But I do think there needs to be something in place where parents can't just do whatever they want, especially when it comes around parenting.
Right. Great advice. And what I hear, one of the main things I hear you saying is try to stay out of court. The court is not your friend. I think I'm quoting you from last week, actually, Colleen. The court is not your friend, and try to mediate it. That would be your first and your best option if there's a pattern, or if you think there's a developing pattern of non-compliance with the agreement.
Yeah, and you know, every divorce I've been involved with, I always put in there that the parties, if they have a conflict in the future going forward, have to seek mediation. Doesn't have to be with me, but they have to seek a mediator as a first step before they go back to court. And I think that should be language that is just in every divorce decree.
Wonderful. That's great.
So thank you. Great questions from people. Really happy that people are writing in, and hopefully someone will be in bed one night and kind of just going through shared parenting stuff and come across some of these questions, and it'll be helpful for themselves or a family member or friend.
Wonderful, Colleen. I'm sure it will. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Talk to you next week, next Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
Tuesday. See you then. Bye-bye.